African countries to look out for in the year 2023 based on economic growth. The International Monetary Fund (IMF) recently released its World Economic Outlook database for 2023, which features the organization's projected gross domestic product (GDP) growth for countries worldwide. Here is how African economies are expected to perform over the coming 2 years, ranked according to anticipated growth in 2023. Overall, Africa's economic growth was projected at 4.5% in 2021. Still, the war in Ukraine has introduced a new and tragic development, with the result that growth in 2022 will slow to 3.8%. East Africa maintained its lead as the continent's fastest growing region, followed by North and West Africa. Hello, welcome to another one of my exiting videos. Please subscribe, like, share and comment. Here are the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa, according to IMF. Sub-Saharan Africa's economic recovery has been abruptly interrupted. But activity bounced back, lifting GDP growth in 2021 to 4.7%. But growth in 2022 slowed sharply by more than 1 percentage point as a worldwide slowdown, tighter global financial conditions, and a dramatic pickup in international inflation spill into a region already wearied by an ongoing series of shocks. According to World Bank, 29 out of 33 countries in the region with available data had inflation of over 5% in July, while 17 were in double digits. The number of countries in debt distress was little changed, while borrowing costs rose significantly. In Ghana, which has sought help from the International Monetary Fund, amid inflation hitting 33.9% in August and the cedi weakening, growth is forecast to slow to 3.5% in 2022, compared to a prediction of 5.5% in April, according to NEWS 24 report. In 2022, the World Bank also cut its growth forecasts for Nigeria and South Africa from 3.8% and 2.1% to 1.9% and 3.3%, respectively. Cote d'Ivoire was projected to be West Africa's fastest growing economy this year at 5.7%. Still, Senegal is set to overtake it by expanding by 4.8% this year, before speeding up to 8% in 2023 and 10.5% in 2024. Kenya, East Africa's largest economy, was forecast to remain at 5%. Here are the top 7 fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa, according to IMF. 1. Senegal. According to the IMF in its World Economic Outlook, Senegal's economy is set to expand the most in sub-Saharan Africa next year. The emerging oil and gas exporters' output is growing 8.1% in 2023, compared with a projected 4.7% expansion in 2022, after producing its first gas from the BP-backed Greater Tortue Ahmeyim field in the third quarter of 2023. That compares with sub-Saharan African growth of 3.7% next year. Senegal's economy gains most of its foreign exchange from fish, phosphates, groundnuts, tourism, and services. However, boosted by several infrastructure projects and the start of oil and gas production in 2023, which will support real GDP and help substantially shrink the current account and fiscal deficits in the coming years. 2. Niger. Putting economic woes behind it, Niger was sub-Saharan Africa's fastest growing economy in 2022, growing at nearly double the rate forecast for Africa's giant Nigeria. Niger's economy was projected to expand 6.9% in 2022, compared to 3.4% and 1.9% pegged for Nigeria and South Africa, respectively. Real GDP growth, averaging 5.6% over 2016-18, was estimated at 6.9% in 2022 due to solid performance by the primary and tertiary sectors. This growth is due to investments in infrastructure, extractives, and services, as well as structural reforms, primarily actions aimed at developing the private sector and strengthening the resilience of agriculture. Inflationary pressures remained contained, with an estimated rate of 3.8% for 2022. The economic outlook is favorable over the near and medium term, with growth projected to accelerate from 6.5% in 2022 to 7.2% in 2023, led by agriculture and supported by the new 3N Agricultural Initiative, continued public investment in infrastructure, and increased FDI in the extractive sector. Growth in oil, which has been negative in the last 2 years, should reach 20.6% and 86.2% in 2022 and 2023. 3. Rwanda. Rwanda's economy suffered heavily during the 1994 genocide. The ethnic cleansing caused a significant drop in GDP and destroyed the country's ability to attract private and external investment. The economy has since strengthened, with per capita nominal GDP estimated at $909.9 in 2022. Rwanda's economy will grow by 6.7% in 2023, accelerating from 6.0% in 2022. Interestingly, all the countries are projected to post developments higher than the sub-Saharan African average of 3.6%, which declined sharply from the 4.7% posted in 2021. The real GDP growth will accelerate in 2023, and a high base effect and moderating global food and fuel prices will see headline inflation gradually decelerate to 8.9% by the end of 2023. This will likely improve consumer confidence, supporting household spending and business conditions. Moreover, there will be strong tourism growth as the hospitality sector's ongoing development and a high COVID-19 vaccination rate. As of October 16, 69.5% of Rwandans had received at least one dose, and this will encourage rising tourist arrivals. Notably, the country is not just creating a business-friendly environment but also diversifying the economy from being almost entirely dependent on agriculture to developing services and a growing manufacturing sector. However, despite sustained economic growth, the government's biggest challenge is eradicating the high poverty rate and creating employment. 4. Congo, DRC. The Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, is the largest country in sub-Saharan Africa, SSA. DRC has unique natural resources, significant arable land, immense biodiversity, and the world's second-largest rainforest. DRC is among the 5 poorest nations in Africa. The country's projected real GDP percent change is estimated to grow by 6.4% in 2022. The economic outlook for the Democratic Republic of Congo is encouraging despite the Russia-Ukraine conflict, with GDP growth in 2022-23 reaching 6.7%, driven by mining and recovery of non-extractives. According to Africa Development Bank, priority investment should continue to support internal demand. Improvements to transport and logistical infrastructure are set to support the resumption of non-extractive activities, services, and industries, stimulating export and tax revenue. Furthermore, the 2023 elections are forecast to increase public spending and slightly widen the budget deficit from 1.6% in 2022 to 1.5% in 2023. However, factors that may contribute to slow growth include political instability, wars, a lack of economic diversification, and over-reliance on natural resource. 5. Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire's economy remained amongst a few sub-Saharan African economies that maintained growth in 2020 despite the COVID-19 pandemic, and in 2021, GDP growth accelerated to an estimated 6%. The Russia-Ukraine conflict could negatively impact the outlook for 2023. However, the West African nation is expected to benefit from investments and reforms in the Côte d'Ivoire 2030 Strategic Plan, the National Development Plan 2021-2025, (NDP), and a more stable socio-political environment. Accordingly, growth should rebound to 6.7% in 2023, driven essentially by agriculture, industrial activity, buildings and public works, transport, commerce, telecommunications, investment, and consumption. Notably, Ivory Coast's economy has grown faster than most African countries since independence. One possible reason for this might be taxes on exported agriculture. The government is the world's largest cocoa beans exporter and the 4th largest general goods exporter in sub-Saharan Africa. The economy continues to post good numbers. Real GDP growth was 6.5% in 2021 and is projected to drop to 6.0% in 2022. 6. Mauritius. Since independence from Britain in 1968, Mauritius has developed from a low-income agriculture-based economy to a high-income diversified economy based on tourism, textiles, sugar, and financial services. Notably, the country's economic performance is mainly determined by initial conditions, remedial policies, and framing institutions. The nation is ranked high in economic competitiveness and Africa's second most prosperous country. The economy of Mauritius is a mixed developing economy based on agriculture, exports, financial services, and tourism. The economy continues to post good numbers. Real GDP growth was 7.4% in 2018 and 2019 and is projected to drop to 6.0% in 2022. After a strong rebound in tourism in 2022, slowing global growth will weigh on arrivals and Mauritian growth in 2023. According to our econometric models, the Mauritius GDP annual growth rate is projected to trend around 5.40% in 2023 and 4.00% in 2024. The services sector is the largest sector of Mauritius's economy and accounts for 76% of the total GDP. 7. Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea's economy traditionally depended on 3 commodities: cocoa, coffee, and timber, but the discovery and exploitation of petroleum and natural gas changed the country's economic profile virtually overnight in the 1980s. Oil now accounts for the vast majority of Equatorial Guinea's exports. It contributes more than 4/5 of its gross domestic product, GDP. According to the IMF, Equatorial Guinea's real GDP growth is projected at 6.1% in 2022 due to solid performance by the primary and tertiary sectors. However, the growth forecast in 2022 was at 5.0% and will be followed by a contraction of 1.9% in 2023. The economy escaped a 7-year recession in 2022. It will continue to grow in 2023-24, bolstered by the hydrocarbon sector, especially natural gas. 8. Benin. Benin's economy depends on subsistence agriculture, cotton production, and regional trade. Cotton accounts for around 30% of the GDP and over 50% of official export receipts. Economic growth in Benin remains robust and in 2022 was at 5.8%. The main driver of change is the agricultural sector, with cotton being the primary export. At the same time, services contribute the most significant part of GDP, mainly because of Benin's geographical location, enabling trade, transportation, transit, and tourism activities with its neighboring states. The Benin GDP annual growth rate is projected to trend around 6.10% in 2023 and 6.00% in 2024. These forecasts rely on reforms in agriculture sector governance and improvements in public financial management and the business climate. 9. Kenya. The economy of the East African country of Kenya has seen much expansion, seen by strong performance in tourism, higher education, telecommunications, energy, industry, and manufacturing. Real GDP is projected to grow at 5.7% in 2022, driven by household consumption and investment on the demand side and services on the supply side. Accommodation and food services and wholesale and retail trade contributed to the growth. At the same time, agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, and quarrying contracted slightly. According to the Ministry of Finance, Kenya's economic growth was at 5.3% in 2022 and is expected to grow at 6% in 2023. Notably, the recently concluded general elections have set the stage for Kenya's next development chapter. The country has made significant political and economic reforms that have contributed to sustained economic growth, social development, and political stability gains over the past decade. 10. Gambia. The Gambia has a liberal, market-based economy characterized by traditional subsistence agriculture. Agriculture accounts for roughly 30% of the gross domestic product, GDP, and employs about 70% of the labor force. Following the 2016 political transition, GDP growth accelerated to 5.7% in 2018, driven by agriculture, tourism, construction, and trade recovery. It has been projected at 5.6% in 2022. But only grew at 4.8% in 2022 and 5.8% in 2023 on the back of agriculture, transport, energy, tourism, finance, and the digital economy. Conclusion. Shortly, sub-Saharan Africa will continue experiencing economic growth. However, this growth is likely to be unevenly distributed across the region, with some countries experiencing more robust growth than others. Several factors are likely to contribute to this uneven growth, including the presence of natural resources, political stability, and the strength of institutions. Despite these challenges, sub-Saharan Africa is expected to continue progressing toward economic development, and the region has the potential to become an increasingly important player in the global economy. Thank you for watching the video. Please consider subscribing, liking, sharing and commenting on the video. Have a good day or night.